This is CG Talks, the podcast where CG guys talk about CG.
This podcast is powered by GarageFarm.net, a place where 3D cloud rendering is incredibly fast and cheap.
Hi there. In this CG Talks one-off, we sit down with Lucian Raicovitan of Bucharest Studio to learn about how he and his team came to be the Romanian 3D visualization powerhouse that they are today. We're also going to learn what goes into creating their amazing photorealistic renders.
Maybe we'll start by you telling us about yourself a bit. What kind of I wanted to get into Bucharest Studio, but first I was wondering, if you could share a few words about yourself as an individual. What inspired you to get into 3D visualization? What your background is? Anything of that sort.
Yeah, for sure. It's so my name is Lucian. I'm one of the two founders of Bucharest Studio. And actually, before we had Bucharest Studio, we had the Lucian R, which was basically our first Archviz company. We kind of started this company about 3 years ago. And before we did so, I was, and I'm still an architect. Like, I do have a stamp to kind of practice architecture here in Romania. But before even becoming an architect, I studied to become an architect. I was in Ireland I did my studies in Ireland. And I think that was between 2004 to 2006, 7, because I did only 3 years in Ireland. And then just after that, I moved to Copenhagen, where I worked at one big architecture company called Big. And I think that's where I am. That's where I am now. Pretty much.
Cool. So how did you, what sort of gave you the impetus to form Bucharest Studio? And you mentioned you were a co-founder. So how did it come about? And
so it started in 2018, actually. It's not so long ago. I was still at Big. And I was a project manager there, just in charge of architecture, pretty much. Just doing architectural projects. I was responsible at the time for some towers in Abu Dhabi. There were 2 towers, and I was responsible for those together with the team I was with in Copenhagen. And eventually, I think there was some communication between myself and some of the founders of Big, and then we decided that maybe it's time for me to part from the firm, because I was enjoying architecture, but I was enjoying more so doing architectural visualizations. So then I parted from Big, and I made a small studio in Copenhagen, where I was working alone, actually. And then after 6 months, one of my best friends and current partner here at Bucharest Studio, his name is Ovi. He joined the team in Copenhagen. And then the two of us rolled for about maybe 6 months, where we worked with 2 other guys in Copenhagen. So in the end, we were an office of 4. And that lasted for about 6 months, pretty much. And then we decided after that it's about time to move to Bucharest, because we were somehow getting old. It's I'm 36 now, so I was maybe 33 at the time. And it was my parents are also getting older. And I think it was a time that we just go home and start supporting the family and see what has changed in the last 20 years that we were, not 20, but 15 years that we were gone from home. So then we came to Bucharest, and then it was the 2 of us, myself and Ovidiu, and then 2 other guys joined, Valentin and Mircea at the time. And then one of them is about to become a partner now in October. Mircea is about to become one of the 3 partners of Bucharest Studio. And then slowly, organically, the office kind of grew. And then I think the name, the Bucharest Studio name, was just more like something that was binding us all together, because it was pretty much the kind of the glue that was holding us. It's more like, it's like the one place, since we all have this background of like traveling and living in other places in the world and all that. I think it was like something that we all had in common, was the city where we were living.
Right, the roots.
Yeah, the roots.
Yeah. Cool. So, but before we move on to like more about Bucharest, I was wondering like what got you into 3D in the first place? I mean, is it? I know a lot of architects eventually have to kind of learn how to visualize in 3D, and then we've met a lot who actually ended up turning it into a full time thing because they just fell in love with the whole thing. Is it the same for you? Or?
Generally, if you're a good designer, you know how to render. That's like it's a must. You cannot be like a great designer and you don't know how to draw or make a good render, because when you do a render or when you do a still image of the building, you actually take care of pretty much all the detailing. Like pretty much what materiality it's going to be on that building, what kind of details, how, like, I don't know, the frames they're going to look like, how the composition of different windows and different holes, and then you also have to take care about a bit the context, that you understand like how the streets, or maybe if there's trees or vegetation and stuff like that. So I think in a way, if you want to be a good architect, you should know how to draw, even though your drawing doesn't have to be aligning with the industry. Like you could be having your own style or your own personality in the way you draw or represent or render. But you do have to know how to do that. You cannot be a good architect. And of course, for me personally, it was more like I was working at Big at this time, and then I was doing a lot of projects. I was like constantly deadlining, and we do have to represent whatever the design is in a way or another, if it's plans or if it's sections or if it's renders. And then I really enjoyed doing renders. So at first I was involved more into doing the visuals for the office. And then later on I became more into, I started doing also the architecture, becoming a project lead and doing the renders on the side. So I think that's where I kind of started doing it. It was more like in an office environment. I was not forced in a way. It would be a stretch to say that it was a forced decision, but it was more like thrown into it. It was more like, hey, how about you do a bunch of renders on this project, even though I had no skills. Maybe I had some style. Maybe I was like nicely dressed or wearing some nice glasses or listening to some cool music. And I think some of the guys associated that with like maybe somebody that can also draw. I don't know why I can. So then I think that's where kind of like it all started. And then slowly, I think, I just got in love with it, because I mean, having like one skill where you can just like express yourself through, especially we're in a creative business, and then having this like one skill where you can express yourself and then be confident about, I think it's pretty glorious to have. And of course it's no way you're going to give that away for anything. And then once I realized that I can render, I just started doing more and more renders, and then I just couldn't stop.
That's cool. So up until that point, you were drafting things out in 2D, like with traditional media.
Actually, I think it would be a lie to say that I was drafting in 2D, because also in school I was using a bit of 3ds Max and some V-Ray, but I was like pretty far off from doing renders, more like collage style, kind of like gangsta stuff out, and I didn't really have there was like no grounded work into it. It was more like improvising.
Yeah.
But slowly, I think with skills, like the more skills one gets, I think the easier it is for that person to express themselves. Because like everybody has great ideas and everybody can think of great things, but a lot of people can't just simply put them together because they cannot really draw them or express them. And since I started doing this at Big, and then around me there were other people that knew how to do some renders. Then you look at others, and then you pick some skills from here, skills from there, and then eventually you have your own vocabulary. You're like your own set of tools you can work with.
Yeah. Cool. So what does a day in the life in your life at Bucharest look like?
My personal life, or you mean like anybody's day, like kind of how is your day throughout?
Well, no,
I
well,
don't know. I don't know.
maybe like you personally, within, like, for example, what's it like when you guys tackle a project on from your perspective first, and then the perspective of your team, I guess.
Um, Interesting. So I think like for me personally, it's more like a day starts at like maybe 10 in the morning when I wake up or something around that. And then I just check emails and all that. I just like have to see what the clients say, like whomever texted, like what other projects. We don't do a project at a time. We do like maybe 5, 6 projects at a time. And then of course there's like different people in charge of different projects from our side, but also from the client side. So it's a bit of an organization. So I would say before 1 in the afternoon, I don't even make it to the office. I'm just like on emails and things like that. And then I just come to the office, and then we sit together with the team, like, or like with different teams. It depends who's doing each project, and we look through the stuff. And then I think by this time we do have quite a bunch of people in the office that are pretty skilled and that can guide other people as well. And then in a way, it almost happens organically now that we're not sitting so long with the team trying to figure things out and trying to change moods and settings and all that, but rather like things just flow. And then if there's like emergencies and stuff like that, we jump on board.
Cool. So, can I ask how many, like how many are you in the team?
We're 18 now.
80?
18, 1-8.
Oh, 18.
Not
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be ideal to be 18, I think, but that's not going to happen for the next years.
18
We're planning to be
still a pretty big number.
Before the war. We were planning to be 40 by the end of this year, or at least that was the plan. But let's see how this develops, because we're at the border. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I was looking through your work, other than what you've rendered with us, and I noticed like a lot of the work on your site. They feature a lot of really interesting designs. I mean, I'm not an architect, so I like maybe for you they're actually kind of like so and so, but I was kind of blown away. Like the designs are they just seem very innovative. There's a lot of play in sort of more. There's a lot of curvature. There's a lot of geometric shape that can seem like very, very. I was gonna say playful, but not. No, like something. It's just very innovative, and actually, it feels like there must be a lot of thought that goes into how you can reconcile like certain shapes with also the structural integrity of the buildings. What's that like? Like, how does that?
I mean,
how do you balance that in the design process?
you presented this so nicely that I wish I could get the credit for the architecture too. But unfortunately, we don't do the architecture. We just do a representation of architecture. But in a way, I mean, I do have the background into designing. So I worked as a designer for almost over a period of 10 years. I worked as a designer for 8 years in different big companies. Like I was in Japan at Kengo Kuma, and then I was in Copenhagen at the Bjarke Ingels Group. Big. So in a way, I gathered some experience as a designer. So I think when you render such buildings, you do have to have an understanding of what they actually try to communicate to better represent them. Because as you say, if there's like a curved building, always the glass has different properties from a boxy building. Like the glass behaves different. Like the refraction of glass just simply behaves different than a boxy building. And then, of course, if it's a boxy building, you can just like wrap an environment around it, and then that's going to be your reflection, and then that's that. But when you have a curvy building, that the environment just becomes more three-dimensional, and it reflects also the immediate context, but also the further away context. So it needs a bit more detail on how you actually understand the geometry.
Mm.
But no, go for it.
At garagefarm.net, you'll find many 3D rendering solutions. Use coupon codes visible on our social media channels during registration to boost your account up to $100 of free render credits, and check how quick and life-saving 3D cloud rendering is.
Oh, no, I was going to ask, so what does that mean in the context of like working in 3D? Like, does curved glass need another, like, is it like a different IOR value, or is it? No, I mean, sorry.
You mean no, I totally get it. It's. I mean, I wasn't thinking of going so geeky into the IOR, but I was thinking more like the geographical context of it, but like the immediate geographical context. So imagine like if you have just a plane of glass that reflects what can that reflect? If you just like a plain straight piece of glass, it would just reflect like almost 90 degrees infinitely. But then you put a tree there. You put a tree there in the direction of that reflection, and you're sorted. But the moment you have a double curved surface, that's going to reflect like something that you didn't really plan for. So all of a sudden that 3D model that's done, or like that's modeled to be seen only in your view, has to extend to like a 360 degree 3D model, or like you'd have to come with some tricks to solve. Yes. Yeah, so I think it's more about on these lines I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, does that mean that you end up having to model more of like the, let's say you're looking at like a window shot. I mean, because of these reflections, because of the like the wider angles of reflection, does that mean you end up having to add more exterior props around it? Or?
Yeah, that's one thing. But then there's also things that, like, let's say if that's I don't know, pixelated, or if it's like triangulated, the whole facade, in the end you're going to end up with like triangles reflect. I think there's like a lot of the times you don't end up with one solution to certain things, but it's more about like, even though you think you've rendered everything, like a lot of the times we just have to come up with new solutions to new projects. So in a way, that's probably also what makes a person that hasn't been studying architecture and looks at a render think that it looks nice, because it has this element of surprise that a normal boxy building, even though like imagine if you render like an average car park building, like regardless of how nice the render and hyper realistic it is, it won't really strike the viewer as an amazing render, even though the settings and the DPI, or I don't know, like all the maps can be like in higher resolution. But just because the architecture doesn't do something spectacular, it just lets the viewer kind of, I don't know, a bit, it'd be a stretch to say disappointed, but it lets the viewer a bit blatant, or a bit like, I don't know, austere. It doesn't let you like dream. Whereas when you have something like where the architecture just talks to itself, the rendering that it becomes a bit easier, even though it's more tricky. Probably it takes more skills, and it becomes a bit more technically complex. But at the end of the day, it's an easier render to do, just because you get the view for free. Like you don't have to do anything with the composition. It's the architecture that just speaks to itself.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, actually. Like, it never occurred to me that I mean, I have to say, like, I think out of a lot of the Archviz renders that we've seen on the farm, like your work has got to be one of the more visually stimulating, in the sense that there are all of these interesting shapes that are in the structures themselves. And now that you put it like this, it I suppose, well, maybe in like some of the works that I've seen on your on your socials. Yeah, there really does seem, maybe there is also that aspect of, like you say, for example, light playing on interesting angles in the structure, mm, maybe creating like interesting shadow shapes. Um, is that what you meant? Like,
Yeah, I mean, of course. Yeah, I mean, you're pretty much summarizing what I said. But it's also, I think it has to do with, like, for example, if we were to do a new project now, and then we like the project, we don't like all the projects, even though we like the renders. Some of the projects, everybody knows that they're just, maybe they become a bit more social, or they become, so you love certain aspects of the project. You love what they do to, let's say, the community. Maybe they do a great things to the great thing to the community. So you love the project for what they do conceptually, but you don't love the project aesthetically. So a lot of times when we deal with projects that are not aesthetically pleasant, I think getting away from moods, or like not creating moody images of, like, you don't want to have it in a rainy day or in a late foggy, I don't know, afternoon, or you just want to have it as like normal and simple and just basic average blue sky and green trees as possible, just because that project has to communicate just the realness of it, because maybe it's just a social thing. It has to do with, like, I don't know, if maybe it's humanitarian, as you said earlier. So then it's not about like moods, and it's not about like making it fancy or depicting it in a very weird angle or something like that. It was just more about like the average kind of, not the average person, but the average skilled, or like the average rendering skilled person taking or like a photographer, the average photographer taking a camera and just shooting a building, and that's it. That's done in a way.
So nothing, like nothing too crazy composition.
Nothing too crazy, composition. Yeah. If it's like that kind of a project. Yeah. But of course, if you're dealing with like the new museum on the waterfront of I don't know, Shenzhen.
Yeah.
Then it's a different league, Then you're really looking for like the most epic morning foggy days where it's just the only bin that has light in it, because it's like some special event where like everybody in Shenzhen woke up in the morning and just like wants to enjoy this, So then, of course, then if you compare the two images, on one hand you have like a humanitarian average day project, and then like the most epic Shenzhen opera. Of course, you're always going to be thinking that, oh, wow, this is such a great render, even though they both have technically they're both the same, So that's why it's also like a bit tricky for us to kind of have favorite projects or favorite renders. Because like now I can just look at almost any render and say, like, I don't even see the final, like I don't look at the render and see like the foggy day, or I don't see the atmosphere. I just see it very technically in a way. So I appreciate a render a lot by how technically it's represented, Like a normal car park can have the same quality for me with the Shenzhen Opera, even though the average photographer, but not meaning like they're not like they're an average person, but rather the average skilled photographer or render person, just any day it's going to go for the Shenzhen Opera just because that looks great. But in reality, I think once you've been, you see a bit in the backstage and you see how images are done and the decisions you take for doing certain images, you do really start understanding why they're both equally good in a way.
Yeah. Interesting. So in like the production workflow, let's say for just for stills, like what part what part in the 3D production pipeline do you feels like has the biggest opportunity for expressiveness? If there is any one particular part, maybe there are more than one. Like, is it in the texturing? Is it in lighting?
Yeah, I mean, that this discussion has been going on for like so many years. Like, what is it like the maps? Is it like the diffuse displacement, reflection, refraction, specular.
The
Is it all these things that
uncrackableness.
make a? Is it like the lighting, or is it like is it the settings? Is it the mood you choose that makes an image great? I think it depends on who's the viewer and who's going to judge this, and that's like it's in their eyes to judge what makes an image great. In my eyes, I think it's crazy to say, but it's the white balance. I think like there's so many skilled and good artists that can handle the white balance correctly, and I think that can just completely ruin an image. Or they're like people just do collages in like 15 minutes, and they just know how to control the white balance, and it always looks realistic. And I think that's kind of and I think like to get the right white balance, of course, you need the right settings, you need the right camera, you need the right textures and maps and all that for your assets. And it does become very complex in a way when you think about white balance. But basically, it's just white balance. You have it in the camera, and it's easy to set. And that's what, in a way, for me, makes a great image. I don't care about the architecture and the 3D and what the building is and how much, like if it's a 1 month project or if it's like 1 day project. It's just like you can tell, like when you look at an image, if it's good just by how the colors are controlled.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And I mean, I think that rings very true, like especially for for 3D artists from any like walk of life, I think, because I think that's the one thing that's super elusive. Like there are a lot of resources to teach you how to model or sculpt or texture and go through, like there are even some resources for lighting and certainly resources for cinematography and things like that. But I think that like what happens, the little nuances, I guess, like finding the right white balance, are things that aren't very often talked about. So that's a valuable take right there. But so I mean, that said, how like how much post does the raw, like does the initial render go through for you guys?
I mean, again, it depends on the project. Like there's like projects that need loads of post. There's projects that need zero post. And I think it just I think we came to a workflow in our office where we just decided that everything that's going to be an animation, which lately is like half of our projects, they just stay in the raw field. We're not going to be doing too much post-production because we're going to have like massive discrepancies between what we submit as renders and what we submit as animation. So let's try to have the whole package somewhere where it's like where it equals out the amount of like post and the amount of 3D, and then we know that both our renders and our animations, they're going to have the same quality. We don't want, because the way we work, we mainly do the renders first. Once we have the renders, we start doing the animation, and then what we present as the renders to our clients, they know that that's going to be pretty much the quality in the animation. So we can't. We can mess around too much with that. But if it's just a project that only needs renders, then it also a bit depends on where it is geographically. Because let's say if it is somewhere isolated in the desert, I think we're going to be able to quickly make that into a 3D, like to get a bunch of assets from different providers. And then we just make a nice setup, and then we plant our building there, and then that's that. But if we know it's in middle of, I don't know, Dusseldorf, it's in city center Dusseldorf, then we need the real context. So we send photographers on site, and then we get real photos, and then we just do collages.
At garagefarm.net, you'll find many 3D rendering solutions. Use coupon codes visible on our social media channels during registration to boost your account up to $100 of free render credits and check how quick and life-saving 3D cloud rendering is.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so for example, would you normally just render duty passes, or do you also make use of like the different render elements that you composite later on?
Yeah, we tend to render them all the times. We get all the channels. They're just super helpful to have regardless. Like, I mean, this is at least our workflow. We need all the passes all the time. Even though we don't use them, it's good to have. It's like you never know when you're going to need the glare, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you never know when you're going to need the glare. And yeah, like I was wondering, have there like what's the turnaround time like, for example? Like how do you leverage, for example, compositing in dealing with, for example, if the client has any notes or wants something changed, and it can be done easily in post? Is that something that you guys experience from time to time, or is it pretty straightforward? Like you.
Well, there's different clients with different demands, and I think if we do only renders, we tend to go to 2 to 3 rounds of comments, but not more. If we do animation, we do kind of the same trip, just that let's say our first draft is just snips from 3ds Max. It's just gray cameras. We just animate the camera and then we just send straight snips. But then the second draft would be something we send to the farm, to garage farm, as in like, I don't know, maybe 720p, like very low resolution, but you can already tell what's going to look like the whole. You understand the cameras, you understand the motions, how people move, and you understand the whole story in 720p. And then once that's agreed, that's almost our second draft, and then we send the final. And we rarely render 4K. We just send the full HD most of the times.
Very cool. Okay, so maybe we can talk a little bit about one of the projects you rendered on the farm. I don't know if I have it as the name of the image. I'm not sure, but yeah, and also on Instagram, I think it's called the Vestra project.
Vestra, yeah.
Vestra, yeah.
It's a cool one. It's a cool one. It's it's one of our first, maybe not very first, but one of the first animations we did. I mean, it was nice. It was good and experimenting times. I think we got some way away from that. We gathered a bit more skills now, I'd say, from that point. But I think it's a good reference, that one, because it also it represents a bit of our starting point in a way. So that's the project. It's actually it's a collab between Bjarke Inge's group and Vestre, the furniture company in Norway. And it's in the middle of a forest, actually, which is pretty beautiful. So they've reused a lot of the trees they've cut. They reused them in the factory. So in a way, it is a bit of a sustainable building, even though it's visually striking to see that somebody builds in the forest. But since it's your forest, and then you're gonna replant those trees somewhere else, and you do that kind of like logically and responsible, I think it's fine.
Yeah. And it was really, I mean, it just, because it's from what I gather, it's like it's sort of a complex, right? That's going to be built. That's built in that forest. It just seems like
it's built already. I think by now they're just topping up the roof. They're just doing the last details. It's kind of a cross. It's a cross. It's like 4 arms that meet in the center, and in the center it's a bit of a public space where the visitors can just come and see a bit of how the factory works. So in a way, a bit of like a panopticon, like a prison where you just sit in the middle and then you have views over the whole building. But this in this case is just very like visitor friendly, because as a visitor you you get to get peaks in all the factory and understand how it works.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much done by now. It's crazy. Like we rendered this with you maybe in 2019, I guess.
Mhm.
We did an animation and a set of renders, and I think by now the building it's done.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, we like that. Also, what kind of struck me about with that project is the vastness of it, because because you do like a fly through animation, right? And you have to cover all of the different sort of key regions of the structure. So I was wondering how like were there how would you, for example, optimize? I mean, I guess this is a question like not necessarily just for this project, but in general. Um, what sort of optimization techniques do you guys use? For example, is it like the entire scene is built with one level of detail, and then the camera flies through it all, or for example, for aerial shots or farther away shots, um, do you uh, reduce your map sizes or decimate geometry or anything like that to make renders faster, or it's just
Totally. We just, of course, we have like we split the whole project in scenes. So each scene has a LOD, like a level of detail, and then of course, if it's like close-ups and stuff like that, our maps they're going to be a bit more higher res, and then forest packs they're going to be a bit more detailed, and the further away from the camera, the less detail they're going to be having.
Yeah.
So I think that's. But regarding the optimization, I think I don't know, like what the hell, I don't know, like if I've never seen, like imagine like I never worked in an Archviz company, and I don't know how others are doing it. I don't know if anything that we're doing it's right. It could be that everything that we're doing it's wrong, but because I can't really compare with it anything, I don't know if any of our stuff it's actually optimized or if it's like a complete failure.
No.
I'm just guessing it's fine, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope it's fine. I hope it's optimized. I don't know. We just use we use mainly V-Ray, and we use light cache brute force for animations.
Oh.
Yeah.
Brute force. Brute force plus brute force.
No. Light cache brute force.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like that would have been whoa, but okay, that's cool.
No. I think brute force would be completely insane time wise. I think it would just, and resources wise, it would take a lot of time. We used to do it. I think we used to do it for renders when our computers were pretty shit, because the baking was like when we had shit. I'm not sure if can I say shit on this podcast.
Sure. No.
So it's all good. So it's all good. So our computers were pretty bad, and then we couldn't really take. They just couldn't take the baking. They didn't have memory enough, so they would just like collapse it and break. And then we eventually. You do have a bit of knowledge about rendering, right? Like Embry and all that.
Yeah. But
dynamic limits and stuff.
Yeah. But I'm not a 3ds Max user, so
okay.
But I have spent some time like with renders.
Yeah. I think it also 3ds Max sounds like a pretty old school technology to be using in animations. But since this is the only stuff we know how to use, we just stick to it. I'm sure there's like, if you use like other softwares, you can come up with different optimizations and different scales, and your stuff is going to look different. But for what we need and for the industry we're in, I think we're confident with the softwares we're using.
No, for sure. I mean,
but regarding again, like if I go back to optimization, we use brute force light cache, but I don't know like what the hell. I don't know if we're doing it the right way or not.
Well, the results speak for themselves, right? So
yeah.
I mean, but what are the for example, I mean, I'm not asking for hard numbers, but or maybe another way to put it is like how, for example, for an animation like Vestre, for the Vestre animation, how, without necessarily having to provide a concrete number,
Yeah.
How big was the render budget for that, or how big did the render budget have to be?
Render budget is in the farm, or render budget for us? Like what was our fee towards the client, or what was the kind of what we spent on the farm?
Yeah, I guess like did what you spend on the farm um
If we're confident in what we spend on the farm, I think we are.
Yeah.
I think the farm is doing a great thing. I think the farm is like fucking great.
That's really good to know. I mean,
yeah, and I'm not saying this. It's stupid because like if anybody would just hear this now, they would just think that we get some sort of like sponsorship from the farm, or like I don't know what the heck we get. Nothing. It's like it's just nice to say things about services that just work, and then like the farm is like so many great things. And I think my favorite thing about it is that you have like a 24/7 kind of assistance, which is incredible. It's like this is nuts. It's like in this world, I think everything should have 24/7 assistance. Like my girlfriend, she sleeps with her phone not on flight mode just because her parents could call her at night. And if the parents call at night, it's something serious. So in a way, you would want to see that in any like environment, like everybody should be able to have a phone that you can call them 24/7, or a device.
That's
and just
true.
Because you can get like things can get like just complete clusterfuck. It's like you're doing animation. It's a complex job. And then all of a sudden you're, I don't know, 3D people, like we use Anima in this case, Anima A, X, Y, Z. And then if there's one thing actually, so these were the great things about the farm. If there's one thing, and I know Garage Farm says that it's not on their side, it's something to do with the Anima itself. But Anima does fail a lot on Garage Farm. I'm not sure if you know Anima, like the software, but it's like this.
Funny story. I actually ended up, there was a time when I used to help with support. So there was a time when I would have to investigate like a lot of Anima issues. And it started from as simple as sort of first our plugin wasn't detecting all of the right files, like the .ani files that were associated with the Anima project directory and stuff like that. So they could range from, okay, like the plugin isn't trying to detect all of the key files, it needs to detect more like all of these particular files for the whole thing to work. From that all the way to, we have no idea what's going on, everything should be working theoretically, and then I'd have to we'd correspond basically with AXYZ personally, and talk to one of the lead devs for help.
And what did they say?
Really long
I'm
time.
very curious.
Sorry?
And what happened? Like, it's still like, we still get problems with Anima. What did they say? Like, how are they going to fix it? Or like what's the...
Well,
do you remember?
At least where I stepped off was it had something to do with, because we were like, our devs were working with their own interpretation. They made their own Max script that was executed from the plugin to handle these things. So we had to collaborate with them, and then they were sharing like the Max scripts that they made that would detect all of the files and all of the dependencies, and then we would just take that Max script and integrate it into our software, and that fixed a lot of problems. But from what I remember, it would have to be updated every once in a while. Like obviously every new Anima release would have to have a new Max script, and sometimes the back and forth would take a little time. And I don't know. I mean, so even now there's still a lot of issues.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I'm not sure if I'm getting too old or anything, but I feel like I'm losing a bit my patience with like updates and like some software, they just simply work. Like things just work. Like why updating things? It's like some things you don't need to update. Like for example, we updated Forest Pack recently, and then all of a sudden, like our files start crashing. some stuff doesn't send, some stuff doesn't open. It's just like, come on. It was
Oh
just a
man.
perfectly functioning software, no need
Oh
for
man.
updating. Yeah.
No, I mean,
But
I don't think that's an age thing. Like, I think the sentiment is universal, right? Really,
right.
really sucks when that happens.
I feel you. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. It's like Photoshop. Where are we now with Photoshop? It's like CS. I can't even recall what it is. I'm sure
Yeah.
like Photoshop 2010 was just perfectly fine. You needed all the new technology in Photoshop. Anyways, nobody uses because it's just like somewhere hidden. And like
Yeah.
nobody's showing you where it is. You just have to like find some crazy tutorial somewhere that's completely hidden.
Yeah. Although I gotta say because I also stopped using Photoshop like a long while back. But the last time I think last year I decided to download the trial and see what was going on. And they have this AI technology that's ridiculous now.
I
So
know, I know, I know,
yeah,
I know.
you've
We
seen
use a
that.
bunch of yeah.
Yeah,
Like
that's
these kind of
crazy.
selections. The selections are nuts now. Like you just
Yeah.
like we use it a lot. We find like a reference photo for like let's say an environment of people somewhere on the street, and then now by clicks you can just select all the people. You don't have to cut out anything
Yeah.
anymore, which is
Yeah.
complete nuts.
Yeah. Super
Yeah,
insane.
yeah, it's pretty
Um
crazy. But they should
yeah.
only add only these things. Like they should not add all the other fuzz around that makes it so slow.
Yeah. Or anything
Because
that
if
breaks the existing.
yeah, exactly. You
Right.
just put like I don't know 6 video cards on your computer. You open Photoshop and it's still slow. It's like what the hell,
Yeah.
man? This,
Yeah.
that,
Kind of it well, Adobe. Not sorry, I don't wanna shit on any like
no, me neither.
brands
No,
or
no,
anything.
because they're doing great. I mean, come on,
They
it's
are,
like a
yeah.
super. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a great software. It's just like you know how it is. You forget about all the good things that certain softwares do to you. You forget about how great they are, but you just complain about the small things that just don't work for you.
Yeah. But actually that's sort of why we have like one of the big reasons we have live support is because it's also nice to have like an ear on the ground, on the actual ground, right? Like it really gives us a good idea of what what issues people are experiencing, like concrete issues that keep turning up, right? And then that's what allows the developers to respond really quickly. Like we know
Yeah,
what
that's
issues
nuts.
take priority and stuff like that, and that's only because we get to talk to customers in real time. So I mean, it helps us and it helps you guys. So
It totally helps. I mean, it's like the
yeah.
most beautiful thing on earth to have a 24/7 support.
No,
It's just
so I
like
mean,
you don't know how liberating it is and how comforting it is. Like
yeah,
you cannot even imagine how comforting it is to kind of work on a project and then you know that okay, I have reserved maybe this 1 day or 2 days for the farm where we can send all the files, and then we know for sure that if something fails, we're always going to be able to talk to somebody immediately. And
yeah.
that's just like, I mean, that's unbeatable. I mean, please don't ever get rid of that.
No,
Don't
no
update
way,
that thing.
no
Don't
way,
come
no
up with a
way.
new solution. It's just like it's best
Yeah,
feature.
cool. So I'm hoping at least like even with the anima issues, the support like is able
Yeah,
to
totally. I mean,
resolve them
even
eventually.
yeah, exactly. We just pack them and then send them to somebody, and then they just replace
Ah,
them, and then that's not. And we
yeah,
even
yeah,
get the refunds for the stuff that render badly. So
yeah.
I think it's great. I have
Cool.
a little complaint, but I would imagine like it's also super complex kind of
Hmm.
mechanism behind all the carriage farm stuff. Like to get all these softwares in that they're all updated at all times, and I would imagine it's like a crazy system behind. I'd be
Yeah.
interested to see how complex this thing can get. And also like the servers, you must have like a big storage, right? How many servers do you have?
Um,
Or like
I'm not
nodes
really
or
like it. Honestly, I
or is it
haven't
like
really
a
been
state
like,
secret
dude. Yes, yeah. Like one is I'm not really
classified?
allowed to disclose that, and secondly, I
Okay.
wouldn't even really be able to give you an accurate number because
Okay. So a
it's
lot.
been a while.
Let's say a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, but there is a lot. Yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah. So like we've got 2 data centers full of those bad boys.
Yeah.
So
I think today it's not even it's pointless to do your own farm. Like we were thinking, we were thinking like, what about we do our own farm? And then it's not so unachievable to build your own farm.
yeah,
But then all of a sudden you need 24/7 support, and then that's that. Then you just say, come on, there's like no point in that. Like how are we gonna be like? Then something breaks, something just it's the same as deciding to be your own dentist. It's like from tomorrow I don't want to go to a dentist. I'm gonna fix my own teeth. It's not. It doesn't work.
No, yeah, and I mean the upkeep is crazy. Like the yeah. So that's well. Thanks. I'm glad you had so many kind words to say.
But it's like I wouldn't say it if I hated the or I wouldn't even have this interview. I think that was kind of. I think it's mainly, and I think it's mainly all the nights I spent talking with like the nicest people on earth on the support when you're a support team. That kind of made me just think how like it feels like everybody's just like blessed with like good vibes, and like how are these people able to keep these good moods when we're just like freaking out in house, like our files don't render and it's just like, what are we gonna do? And then we just talk to somebody that's like, I'm on this, let me just fix this and that, and then just send me a package and then it all sorts out. It's great.
Yeah, good to know. I mean, it gets pretty hectic for us as well, but I mean, I think that's also part of it, right? Like because everyone in the support team is an experienced 3D artist. A lot of them are actually
really? I never knew.
So a lot of them actually come from an architectural background as well, or at least have done architectural visualization, so they can really sympathize. Like they know, and I think it's safe to say everyone is used to spending late nights in high pressure situations. So
I think at one point we were discussing on so you see how funny this thing is. Like we were discussing over on the support team. There was about to be some event. I think it stopped during COVID. It was just before COVID. There was about to be some event. I can't remember where. It was like an Archviz event in anyhow. And then
the D2 conference.
I think it was D2 or something. And then the guys at the support said, "Oh yeah, we're going there." And then we said, "Oh yeah, we're going there too." And then I was like, "Oh yeah, let's catch up for beers," Yeah. And this whole conversation was happening on like the support pop-up window on the carriage farm. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. That's I really appreciate that about those guys are like true champs.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
And that's where we'll end this conversation. Thanks for listening and stay tuned for more interviews at CG Talks.